Hello and welcome to How Did This Not Get Made?
This is the podcast all about the movies you never saw, the scripts that were never filmed, and the ideas that never even made it to the page. My name is David Spencer.
My name is Daniel Kaka.
And I'm Alexa Quizon. Hi.
All the way from David's living room.
The other room.
Oh my goodness. I traveled so far.
Welcome to our podcast. I know that this is not the first time that you have been here before. You were on season 1.
Previously, the voice of Mary Jane.
Oh my goodness. Oscar-winning performance, I like to call it. I was about to mention that I thought that this was going to be our first collaboration, Dan, because you and I have been friends for a long time. We've worked together in many different jobs, but I thought that this was the first time we were recording a podcast together. And it turns out I forgot that I played a very sensual version of Mary Jane in one of your podcasts.
You've also played the Tesserelk.
Yeah.
I did. Oh my goodness. That happened. Oh my goodness. I was a Tesserelk. The Tesserelk, from what fans remember.
Yeah.
Yeah, but in this instance, we're actually having you on for your voice, your opinions, your point of views, your insight.
Oh my gosh.
Your love of Disney.
I've graduated. Yes. I'm no longer just a voice. I have thoughts and feelings. This is great.
And of course, we should mention that Alexa is the best part, many would say, of my other show, Come On Pods with Michael.
You're too kind, David. I know we're married and stuff, but you really don't have to.
Everybody agrees that it's the best part of the whole show.
Me. I don't know what people say. I'm just living, I know nothing about that sort of thing. But you brought me here for my love of Disney,
yes,
which I'm very excited about.
It was the love of Disney, and for today specifically, we are diving deep into Pixar.
I'm what I call a Disney enthusiast, not a Disney expert. So I still get excited when I hear new things about it. So,
So David and Alexa, can you tell me a little bit of your history with Disney fandom? And kind of how that grew.
You go first, David, because this is going to take a long time.
As a kid, Pixar movies specifically meant a ton to me. I've always been a huge fan of Pixar, and in fact, I would say I've probably been a bigger fan of Pixar over the years than I have been of Disney. Toy Story was one of those VHS tapes that we had as a kid that I watched over and over and over and over and over again. That was easily my favorite movie as a kid, to the point where I remember, when I was in high school or something, watching it for the first time in years and realizing that I was basically mouthing along with every single word of the movie because it was just like that written into my heart. Pixar has always been a big deal for me, and Alexa and I both have a lot of our relationship has been expressed through Disney and Pixar and love of Carl and Ellie and Up. And even last year when Disney Plus first came out, Alexa and I went on a big Pixar marathon during Thanksgiving break and winter break. I think there was 1 or 2 days. There was a day in there where we watched something like 4 or 5 Pixar movies in a day.
That's gotta be emotionally straining.
It was, Dan. You joke about it, but it's true. I'm not okay.
Yeah. I watch a short and it's only 2 minutes and I'm already weeping uncontrollably.
We actually never even finished our Pixar marathon. We got basically through that first era of Pixar, the Lasseter years, right up until Toy Story 3, and we stopped doing our marathon. And I keep trying to tell Alexa, hey, let's keep watching. I know that Brave isn't the most beloved movie ever, but neither of us has seen it before, and let's just keep on going. And eventually we'll get to Inside Out and Coco and get to the good stuff again. But for whatever reason, we just haven't put the time into it.
You have? Brave.
No.
Yeah, I just don't talk about it.
Because it's just fine.
No, it was more of like, Brave was supposed to be my movie, right? She was reckless. She had really crazy hair. She was rebellious. And, you know, I was like, this is going to be my movie.
That sounds like Mulan.
Yeah, right? Oh, I didn't even get to Mulan yet. But yeah, we got to Brave and I saw it and I was just like, I left the theater going, well, let's try again. Like, you know?
You know, this is one of those studios that I would watch documentaries for. Alex and I both watched that Pixar documentary, The Pixar Story, this morning. But I have the book of, I think it's called The Pixar Story. I don't remember what the book is called, but that goes into a ton of detail of the history of Pixar and its creation. I've always been really fascinated by the behind-the-scenes story of that company as well. Alexa, what about you?
Oh my goodness. I know this is an hour-long podcast, but here we go, friends. Speaking of VHS, this is definitely going to show my age. I really wore down a lot of my VHS tapes. Most importantly, the Little Mermaid one. And then I found out that there was a hidden image in the Little Mermaid VHS cover. Yeah. And then I can't believe that I had that VHS cover. I was basically holding on to history, if you will. Disney has just been such a big part of my life. I have probably 8 tattoos. 6 of them are obscure Disney references. To see who else is like me, for them to go, you know what that reminds me of? Oh, wait a second. That looks like Stitch's alien language saying Ohana. And I was like, yes, you're my people. Disneyland played a very huge part in my relationship with David. If he doesn't like Disney, I think it's over. Because I was an annual pass holder when I was pretty young. When I mean young, I mean 21. So that was when it was a lot cheaper. And I would go basically every Monday in between classes, because I had a morning class, I had a night class. So in between those times, I would go cry my eyes out all the time. I'm still that person that if I go to Disneyland and if I watch a show that I've seen multiple times, take me to Path of the Jedi in Tomorrowland, I'm done. You'll have to carry me out of there and cradle me. Mickey's Magical Map, as cheesy as it is, I'm sure there's some cheese in there, but when Stitch comes out during Hawaiian roller coaster ride, I'm just done.
It's time to try the Hawaiian roller. This is my family.
David looks at me and laughs at me because I'm pretty sure he looks at me and goes, is this a real person? I was just crying over a mascot. I mean, we got engaged in Disneyland because we're pin traders. This is how far my fandom goes, is that I did pin trading in Disneyland too. And so our engagement was David doing a fake pin trade with one of the cast members. I'm surprised I didn't explode from all the emotions in there. Speaking of Mulan, I think that was a very big point of my life where it's funny because you don't notice like how many Disney movies you go through and you wonder, like, am I that person? You were Ariel, you were Aladdin, like you were just all these people, you're just mimicking them. And then to see Mulan for the first time, being Asian myself, I think Mulan is probably the most accurate depiction of Asian life. But honestly, there are some aspects to that I was like, oh my God, holy crap, this that's us. And I didn't realize how big that was at the time. And then you look back on these movies, especially when we did the Pixar marathon, I had realized very much so like how deep things really were. Mm-hmm. That's why we stopped the marathon, because at some point all of my childhood trauma just came back and like all at once, and we had to take a little break. Who knew I was going to cry over a car in Cars? So there you go.
I remember watching Incredibles 2 in theaters, and Pixar now does those shorts in front of every movie. That's kind of become their staple now. And I remember watching Bao before Incredibles 2. I'm half Asian, and my mom's side, she's Thai, and I'm first generation in the States. So it hit really hard. Pixar has a way of being very specific about their messages, and they can tell it in such a unique way that really hits you hard. And then I got hit with Incredibles 2 right after that, trying to watch it through my tears.
I remember you messaged me too, or you said something to me. You were like, "You need to watch Bao," and I was like,
Yeah.
"Dan, don't you tell me that right now. Don't you ever like? I already know what's gonna happen here. I mean, I don't know what's gonna happen, but I know what's gonna happen to me. And the fact
Yep.
that you, me knowing that you're half Asian, telling me to watch Bao, that's a big deal. So
Yeah.
wait till I got to Float. That was even worse. Like I was.
Oh,
just,
yeah.
I'm just done. I can't.
Mhm. For me, Disney has always been around. More specifically with Pixar, though, because I was of that age that I really love Pixar. But as a kid, we had a Sega Genesis. We didn't have an NES. We didn't have a Nintendo. Like everyone else had a Nintendo, and for some reason, our household had a Genesis. And the games that I played were like Sonic 2, Sonic Spinball. There was this Formula 1 racing game. And then there was this Toy Story game that you could play on the Genesis. I started asking around about this game because turns out it is not as common as I thought it was. To me, like this was just part of my childhood that I just played this obscure Toy Story game on the Genesis. But I actually put out a poll on my Instagram to see how many people had played it, and I got 9 other people who had played this game.
Shout out to the 9 people, right?
Yeah. It is fairly rare.
I just had to look up images of it. I never played this game, but I do vividly remember a commercial for it in front of some Disney VHS that I owned. I don't remember which one, but I definitely remember seeing commercials for this game.
It was a really interesting platform game where you play as Woody. Well, you first play as Woody and then you start playing as other characters as you go through the storyline. But like you are in Andy's room and you have to like jump from block to block. There are like the sharks that'll like jump up and try to get you, and then you have to use your pull string, like this MacGyver tool for everything. So like you could tie up people with it. You can use it like Indiana Jones and swing across a gap with it. It was very versatile. It was a really interesting game. I should mention what we're actually talking about and kind of why we're talking about it. We kind of skirted around it, but this is our special holiday episode. And I figure that between seasons, we're still working on season 2 right now. I figure that during the holidays, we might as well release a special holiday episode. I was trying to look into interesting Christmas movies that didn't get made. One of them that popped up was the sequel to Nightmare Before Christmas, but turns out there was actually no story behind it. A lot of the speculation was just journalists going up to the creatives like Tim Burton and be like, hey, is there going to be a sequel? And they're like, if Disney approves it, I'll do it. And it was just a bunch of creatives saying that. There was no actual script or anything for it. I don't know who's reporting on this, but this is why we do our deep dives. So you will not see a sequel to that. I will say, though, if you are craving more Nightmare Before Christmas, they did come out with a series of comic books in 2018 that follows the adventures of Ghost. And there's like 3 or 4 comics there. It's pretty interesting.
Of Ghost? Wait, oh
Yeah.
my goodness. What?
But we are not here to talk about that. We are here instead to talk about Tin Toy, more specifically the Tin Toy Christmas. What would have been probably the first feature-length movie that Pixar was going to put out there and did not work out that way and instead went to Toy Story. But it was based on Tin Toy, the short. Now, have either of you two seen Tin Toy?
Yes.
Yes.
Oh my goodness. I honestly don't blame them for not having a sequel, because why would they want some demon baby to be the star of the show? It would traumatize children like it traumatized me. Yeah.
That baby is terrifying.
That baby is terrifying. It's just, yeah.
I first saw Tin Toy years ago. We had that Pixar Shorts DVD, which is the first time I saw Tin Toy and Red's Dream and the one with the bee, which one I don't remember what it was called. But I remember also when we did our Pixar marathon together a year ago, we were trying to include the shorts as well. And watching through each of those shorts, we were trying to do it in release order of everything Pixar had made that was on Disney Plus. And then we rewatched it this morning and just got reminded again of how terrifying that baby is.
It's just, I'm not even convinced that that's a baby. It looked like an old man shrunken down with the diaper.
You can tell that they didn't figure out how to model human people because, like, the head looks like a lump of clay, just like vaguely in the form of a face.
I remember the behind the scenes of Toy Story, and I think Lasseter explained that the reason why they decided to do toys is because it was much easier to animate and more believable to animate because they didn't have the technology to do people or skins or anything like that.
Yeah.
Even with like if you watch the scene of like Andy's birthday and there's a gathering of a bunch of kids, if you pause it at that moment, you'll notice it's just Andy duplicated many times and dressed up in many different ways to make it look like his friends.
Yep.
The bandies, yeah.
Yeah, I feel like that baby belongs in an echelon of creepy movie babies, like right along with Eraserhead.
I absolutely have a list of creepy babies, which is why we decided not to have kids. That's a good form of birth control right there.
Yeah.
I remember just thinking like, wow, they put so much effort into the shine of that toy. Like the toy was like, looks like it was polished. It was beautiful. It was cute. And then I bet in the writer's room, they were just like, we need to give them variety. We can't just have cutesy. We need to have realism. So they thought of a demonic baby. Perfect. We got that.
Yeah.
I mean, it makes sense when you see all those toys underneath the couch and they're all terrified.
Yeah.
You're just like, I get
I can
it.
relate. Yeah.
I'm with you.
I mean, it might be a very realistic portrayal of what a baby looks like to me. So perfect.
Yes.
Yeah.
Hitting home. So I want to go into the history of Pixar. Pixar, it was founded originally by computer scientists Edwin Catmull and Elvie Ray Smith. Now, in 1974, the two of them attended the New York Institute of Technology, where they were recruited into the CGL, or the Computer Graphics Lab, which was led by Alexander Schur, who had the ambition to try and create the world's first computer animated film. So in 1979, the lab caught the attention of two filmmakers, Francis Ford Coppola and George Lucas, and asked the 6 other members to join and work for the computer division at Lucasfilm. Obviously, this included Ed and Al. The 6 original members that left didn't want to tell Schur, who was the head of the computer graphics lab, that they were going to be leaving, and they wanted to make sure that he wasn't suspicious of what they were doing. So throughout the next year, they would actually find these temporary jobs. They would resign from CGL and then eventually join the Lucasfilm graphics group. Lucas was looking into creating a digital workflow for his production company and was looking to these guys from CGL to help create that. On the list of things that he wanted, it included a digital film editor, a digital sound editor, a laser film printer, and wanted to keep pushing the boundaries of computer graphics. While working for George, the team then worked on an unfinished short called The Works, where they developed a lot of CG animation tools like particle effects and many more. For Catmull and Smith, they were credited as the inventors of the alpha channels. I actually had to look into what alpha channels means. Do you know what that means?
Sounds scientific.
So alpha channels is basically you have 2 separate planes when you're dealing with animation. So you have the background channel and then you have the foreground that kind of like can pass in front of the background without any like interference with the background pixels.
Is that almost like layers when we're animating?
Yeah.
Like, oh, okay.
It's basically layers, but putting that into the context of computer graphics.
That makes sense to me.
In 1982, the team worked with Industrial Light and Magic to make 2 monumental sequences that revolutionized computer graphics. There was the Genesis effect, which was used in Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan.
Genesis is life from lifelessness. It is a process whereby molecular structure is reorganized at the subatomic level into life-generating matter of equal mass.
And they created the stained glass knight for young Sherlock Holmes.
Ooh.
Have you seen that sequence?
Yeah, no, I've definitely seen that sequence before.
Alexa, have you seen this?
I have not. I didn't even know that existed.
I'm going to share my screen for just a moment.
Heck yeah. See, I love discovering all these new things.
But like, this is famously one of the first CGI sequences. And this was in 1985.
What? Whoa! What the? Oh! Same priest, same.
Yeah.
Like that was terrifying, but like in a good way. That was actually, if I saw that in the present time, I would be like, that's pretty damn cool.
Yeah. Like, this is what? We're 45 years later, and it's still pretty impressive what they were able to pull off. It still looks really good.
Oh, yeah.
This group had expanded from the 6 original members to around 40 people working in the computer graphics division while they were doing those 2 sequences. Now, we're going to talk about a very important person to Pixar, because in 1983, that is when they hired John Lasseter.
Who's that?
Film
Just kidding.
as the interface designer, and helped animate, well, I guess he was there to animate the short film The Adventures of André and Wally B.
Yeah.
Before Lasseter got involved with Lucas and eventually Pixar, Lasseter was an animator. He grew up watching Chuck Jones cartoons. In high school, he read Bob Thomas's book, The Art of Animation, and knew he wanted to be an animator.
When I was in high school, I found this book, this old ratty book, called The Art of Animation. And it was about the Disney studios and how they made animated films. And it was one of those things that just dawned on me. People make cartoons for a living. They actually get paid to make cartoons. I thought, that's what I want to do.
He attended the California Institute of the Arts and attended a fairly new character animation program. While he was there, he was taught by veteran animators Eric Larson, Frank Thomas, and Ollie Johnson, so the famous Frank and Ollie. Mm-hmm. And alongside him were a few other successful classmates, including Brad Bird, John Musker, Henry Selick, Tim Burton, and Chris Buck.
Wow.
And a lot of them went into Disney animation.
Oh, yeah.
Immediately after. I know, like, Tim Burton immediately went into Disney animation after that, although he hated it, but yeah. Although Lasseter would eventually work in the Disney animation department, his first job with Disney was during the summers between school semesters, where he worked as a Jungle Cruise skipper, which is where he learned comedic timing and how to captivate an audience.
Those are new zebras and giraffes lined up next to a lion's den like you'd find them in nature, and that's a dead zebra. Welcome to the happiest place on earth.
It's an important job being a skipper. Like, I try to laugh at all of your jokes because I know how hard it is telling those same jokes over and over again.
Look, it's the backside of water.
I know. Whenever they say, like, look, it's the backside of water, I'm like, you didn't say that right.
Take 2.
I'm leaving. I'm leaving this boat. I'm swimming. Do it again.
My favorite skipper that I've ever seen was probably Dan. Skipper Dan.
I'm a tour guide on the Jungle Cruise ride. Skipper Dan is the name.
The best skipper I ever heard of, he told jokes that were not in the script. So there was like a sequence where like the people shooting darts at you, they have to reset basically. And then he stays in that section and goes, you should all be ashamed of yourselves. Now go bow your heads in shame. And all of them all at once bow their head. And I was like, this is amazing. It was so great.
I heard that one of the first skippers who started making jokes and just making it a fun ride for everyone, he was actually fired for making those jokes. And then eventually it became the norm of being a skipper.
There's a rumor that there's something called like the dirty boat or something like that, where if you're the last boat, they usually tell like the raunchiest jokes because usually there's no kids by that point. And I once asked, I was like, hey, are we gonna get the dirty boat? And then he was like, no such thing. What are you talking about? And I'm pretty sure that that's the same dude that made the different jokes that night. I was like, yes, this is great.
Amazing. I need to experience this once the world opens back up. Back to Lasseter. While he was in school, he actually produced 2 animated shorts, The Lady in the Lamp.
Hurry, boys. Get ready. She'll be here any minute.
And Nitemare. Both of which actually won an Academy Award. That's insane. Like, imagine being in college and whatever your short film was, like, wins an Academy Award. That's nuts.
I worked on a student film for like one day that ended up being nominated for an Academy Award, which is pretty cool. I can say I'm an Academy Award nominated boom operator.
Brilliant.
That's what they were talking about at the Oscars. They were like, that boom operator, though, definitely operated that boom quite nicely.
In the next category, we got boom operators. We got
boom operators for student short films.
To be honest, that should be some kind of category.
That only worked on the film for one day. I wasn't even on for the whole shoot. I was just on like their day of pickup shot.
While Lasseter worked at Disney Animation, he got a glimpse at the first light cycle sequence for Tron, and he thought that there could be a lot of potential in CG animation. His thoughts that there could be a way to blend 3D CG animation backgrounds and blend them in with drawn animation. He proposed this method to Disney when he pitched Thomas Stitch's book, The Brave Little Toaster, to be made into a movie. To test out his method, Lasseter and a few other animators started putting together a short based on Where the Wild Things Are.
After setting the trend with Tron, animators turned their efforts to a test based on a classic book by author Maurice Sendak called Where the Wild Things Are. The object was to make the backgrounds with a computer and incorporate classic, hand-drawn Disney character animation with those backgrounds.
While working on the short, Lasseter had unknowingly gone over the heads of a few of his supervisors who did not approve of this project. Ed Hansen, who is the animation administrator, and Ron Miller, the head of Walt Disney Studios, learned of the short, which had no perceived budget. And working with CG, I mean, there was a lot of unknowns when it comes to that. So once Lasseter was found out, he was promptly fired from Disney.
And Ed Hansen calls me down to his office. And I come down, and he said, well, John, your project is now complete, so your employment with the Disney Studios is now terminated.
And soon found himself at Lucasfilm. Yeah, his dream job was basically taken away, which is, and so soon. Like, he was working on a lot of smaller projects while he was at Disney, but it was like nothing major that he had done yet. And the time that you actually get to do potentially a full movie, and they're like, nope, you're fired.
You're too wild. Like, can't have this.
While Lasseter was working over at Lucasfilm, he suggested that they should call their new digital composing computer the Picture Maker. Smith then suggested that it should be called the Pixar, since the device was laser-based, and eventually, after a meeting, they called the device to help render their images the Pixar, which is where that name comes from.
Wow, I never knew that.
So, going back to the adventures of André and Wally B, it was a groundbreaking short, entirely animated using a computer. The short was less than 2 minutes long, and it showed the story of André's encounter with a bee named Wally B. In the end, it's implied that André is stung by Wally, but André gets the last laugh when he throws his hat back at Wally. This is the first CG animation to introduce a motion blur. It had a lot of complex 3D backgrounds and used particle systems to light the scenes. What made it so revolutionary is Lasseter's input that the characters needed to be able to squash and stretch to show more emotion, breaking that rigid shapes that you would typically see that a lot of CG animation had to adhere to. In 1983, after Return of the Jedi, Lucas did not see the revenue that he was expecting from the film and found the graphics department was far too expensive to maintain. Nearly everyone was worried that they were going to be sold to another company, and the idea of making the first computer graphics movie would have to be put on hold. Most of them branched off from Lucas to create their own company to avoid getting split up and continue to look for other investors instead. At first, they had to find a way to make any sort of revenue, and they didn't have the technology powerful enough to create sequences that they wanted. So for a little while, their Pixar imaging computers were sold to government agencies and scientific and medical communities because of their graphics abilities.
Wow.
In 1986, Ed Catmull was the president of Pixar. Alongside was Al Smith as the executive vice president. It was their responsibility to try and find the next investor, and soon they found one. And do you know who this guy is?
Did he have some kind of computer. I don't know. Like
he wore a lot of turtletnecks.
He wore a lot of turtlenecks. Yeah, like he made this really obscure product. He was like a fruit salesman, Macintosh or something like that. I'm not sure. Like
yes, it's Steve McIntosh.
Yeah, that guy, right?
Yes,
cool dude. Just kidding.
So this was Steve Jobs, who eventually became their investor. At the time, Jobs had been fired from Apple and was looking to start his new computer company, Next, which is NE with capital X, capital T. But on February 3rd, 1986, Steve Jobs paid George Lucas to buy Pixar for the low price of $5 million.
Chump change.
I say low price because for George Lucas, he thought that they were worth a lot more, and Steve Jobs was trying to get them at the cheapest price possible. I mean, given this guy just lost his job, so you might as well cut him a deal.
Right. I think the moral of the story is everybody just work for a major company and get fired from it and find the other people that also got fired from a major company, and that's it.
And that's how success is built.
That's how success is built. Just get fired. It's going to be fine.
Fail upward. That's the moral of Hollywood. Although Jobs seemed to be more interested in selling hardware than creating animation. While he worked there, Disney bought their Pixar imaging computer with custom software written by the Pixar team. This was used to help automate 2D animation processes, which included the revolutionary CAPS system, C-A-P-S system, which allowed animators to fill in colors, kind of like a paint bucket tool, rather than having to color it in themselves. And the first film to use this technology was Rescuers Down Under, and then soon after, Beauty and the Beast.
Oh, yeah.
Fortunately, Jobs was still wanting Pixar to succeed in creating the first CG animated film. During the time the image computer was being sold, Lasseter was working on Pixar's first independent film, Luxo Jr., a short about 2 desk lamps, a big one and a small one, playing around with the now iconic Pixar ball, the yellow with the blue stripe and the 2 red stars on it.
Probably my next tattoo.
Yes. The short was shown at the 1968 SIGGRAPH, which is a acronym for Special Interest Group on Computer Graphics and Interactive Techniques. Wow. Couldn't really rethink that name, you guys. All right.
Mouthful, a little bit.
And he received much praise for the revolutionary short. The short also received an Academy Award nomination for Best Animated Short, the first CGI film ever to be nominated in the Academy.
Wow.
Steve Jobs invested nearly $50 million into Pixar, which gave him full control of the company. Jobs continued to push the sales of the image computer with not much luck. The only department that seemed to be making money was the animation department, producing CG animated commercials for companies such as Tropicana, Listerine, and Trident.
Orange met peach, and peach met mango, and all together they started to tango. New Tropicana Pure Tropics, delicious.
The team consisted of Lasseter, Bill Reeves, Eben Odsby, and Sam Leffler, with 2 new hires, Peter Docter and Andrew Stanton. In 1990, Pixar sold off their hardware division to Viacom Systems, which included 18 of their employees. When I first read that, I was like, wait, they sold 18 employees? And then I realized, oh no, they're operating the system. They also sold some of their software tools to Mac and Windows. Meanwhile, the company physically moved from San Rafael to Richmond, California. Also during this time, Pixar made a few independent shorts like Red's Dream, Knick Knack, and the Academy Award winning Tin Toy.
Academy really loves that creepy baby.
Yeah.
We were all creepy babies once. I just want everyone to remember that. Yeah.
Yeah. And Pixar's the only one telling the truth.
Exactly.
Tin Toy was the short that grabbed the attention of the Disney CEO, Michael Eisner, and Walt Disney Studio chairman, Jeffrey Katzenberg. Disney approached Pixar with the idea that they would help finance and produce the first CG animated feature film. At first, Lasseter was hesitant to join Disney. On record, he actually told Disney chairman Peter Schneider, he told him no 3 times. I mean, given that he was fired from Disney and they're like, hey, come on over. This will be great. Not like last time at all, where we said that you can make a movie and we'll fire you for no reason. Disney doesn't fire directors for no reason, right?
I feel like Disney just likes to hire people just to fire them, just to say that they did. Like, that's their thing.
I mean, that's certainly a Lucasfilm's thing. I'm sure there was also probably an element as well where Lasseter has been burned by this studio not seeing something before and like doesn't want them to pull the plug again. But also I feel like the Disney brand is so precious. And at the time, this is the Disney Renaissance where they've been like building their brand up again. And I'm sure there was a thought of, I want this to be my own story. I want this to be my own thing. I don't want this to turn into Disney's movie.
Yeah, and I can understand that because it's like the company that he felt betrayed by is most likely and feels like it now where they're basically taking the credit for all of his work.
Yeah.
He was hesitant at first, but he later on convinced Lasseter to direct and animate the film by saying that you don't have to come down to Disney Animation. In fact, you could do the whole thing at the Pixar studios and we'll try to stay as hands-off as possible. We'll see how that goes. Pixar was on the verge of collapse at this point. They weren't really making much money. And Lasseter was really pushed into a corner where he really didn't have much choice. So he eventually hunkered down. And in 1991, he pitched a story generically about toys, saying like, we can do a story about toys. It wasn't really developed yet. But Disney agreed. And they actually offered them a $26 million and a 3-picture deal.
Wow.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Must be nice.
At first, Pixar was hesitant on taking on the task of creating a full-length feature film. Keep in mind that all they've done were commercials and shorts anywhere from 30 seconds to 6 minutes long. Now they have to do 90 minutes. So instead, Pixar reversed the pitch and said, hey, I got a new idea. We're going to do a sequel to Tin Toy. This is going to be a half-an-hour special. And we're going to see if we're creating a project of that magnitude instead. So instead of jumping from 6 to 90, we're going to do 6 to 30 minutes and see if we can do that. There was no script for the Tin Toy Christmas, which is what they proposed, but there was a plot that was developed. I mean, keep in mind that for most animation, there usually isn't a script. A lot of it is actually done through storyboards. I know, like with the behind the scenes of, say, Samurai Jack. If you ever watch Samurai Jack, there is little to no dialogue. I think there are multiple episodes where dialogue is not said at all. And I remember watching the behind the scenes of it, and they explain that they don't really have scripts, but whoever's writing the episode actually puts together storyboards and then pitches that entire storyboard to the team to create the story. So there are no scripts per se. I imagine with a lot of animation, this is kind of how it's done. It's a very visual medium.
Animated shorts in general, but like also specifically Pixar shorts, I feel like they're constantly trying to tell a story without any dialogue. I mean, Pixar was putting shorts in front of their movies for years, and I think the first one that had any dialogue was Boundin', which, you know, was in front of Cars, I think. Classic Mickey Mouse shorts as well. Like, you don't want to put dialogue in unless you absolutely have to.
So I'm going to go through just a quick synopsis of what the story was going to be. It wasn't fully fleshed out from what I could see, but while I'm going through this, try to think of like all the Toy Story sequels as I'm going through this, and you might resonate on a few things. So in this, we have the main character, Tinny, who is the Tin Music Man toy. He is part of a toy line that was sold in the 1940s, but due to poor sales, Tinny and his friends were put in storage. Once in storage, he puts himself into this long, deep sleep, kind of like how people go into like cryo sleep whenever they travel through space. Sure, but when he wakes up years later, he is in a modern day mega toy shop. Think like Toys R Us or like Al's Toy Barn. Yeah. Upon waking, he can't find his friends. So, on Christmas Eve, he goes out to find them. Along the way, he meets a very sarcastic ventriloquist dummy looking for his owner and a soft pink bear named Lotso.
Alexa's holding her Lotso as she's recording right now.
I'm going to cry. All right.
We could have had Lotso in the mid-90s.
Wow. Lotso was the first Toy Story character ever created.
Do you hear that, Lotso? Oh my goodness.
Unless there's other Toy Story characters that show up in this pitch. But it sounds to me...
I mean, it sounded like Woody was one of them.
But that's the thing is, like, that wasn't Woody yet. It was like, it went from a ventriloquist doll to a cowboy doll to Woody.
It was Schmoody. Like, that's what the name was. Schmoody and Fuzz Might Sear. Yeah.
They pitched this. Disney agreed to do the special. But now Pixar was running to the issue that they needed to find a network willing to produce and afford the fees. And according to director Pete Docter, the budget that they were proposing was about 18 times higher than most allowed budgets for Christmas specials.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, every network passed on it. And eventually that story was shelved.
It's so interesting to me about the whole making a Christmas special, because it does seem like a really fantastic early step for an animation company. It is that good halfway between a short and a feature, but of course it requires so much more faith in somebody else being able to pay for it than being able to put out a feature. It's asking somebody else to take a risk when they're not going to want to take that risk.
Yeah. And this is a brand new technology. Like all they've done was these 30-second, 6-minute shorts, and they're like, yeah, I would pass on that too.
Yeah.
And especially if it's costing multiple millions of dollars. And like, I don't see the turnaround on that being too high there.
I think 3D animation, even after Toy Story, it took years for it to really come to TV in a way that was economically feasible.
And now we have studios who are turning to CGI as the cheap alternative to typical animation. And even drawn animation a lot of it is so digitized, if not entirely.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So they scrapped the special and they decided, okay, we're going to do the 90-minute movie, but we're going to continue on with the character Tinny. And they tried to expand a story where Tinny was left behind and had to find his way back home.
Was it still going to be like a Christmas setting?
No, it wasn't going to be a Christmas setting. I think it was like, it wasn't Andy at this point, but like their owners had like moved away and he was left behind.
Yeah.
Along the way, he meets the ventriloquist dummy and ends up in a preschool where they learn about how toys never get abandoned because when the older kids leave, the new kids come in and play with them.
When the kids get old, new ones come in. When they get old, new ones replace them. You'll never be outgrown or neglected, never abandoned or forgotten. No owners means no heartbreak.
Disney thought the story was fine, but they wanted to make some changes. Like with Tin Toy, they wanted something more up-to-date, like some kind of spaceman.
What?
Thus, the birth of our favorite space superhero, Lunar Larry, which sounded really silly, and they eventually changed it to Buzz Lightyear. This was more an homage to Buzz Aldrin.
Yeah.
And then next, they wanted to change the ventriloquist dummy to a cowboy. I don't know if you've seen like early concept art of Woody.
Oh, yeah. He's got that big head with the ventriloquist doll mouth.
Yeah, he's just a massive, massive head, that huge, like that long jaw. Almost.
Yeah.
I've seen like early asshole Woody. like just
Oh,
just
we'll
straight
get
up
to asshole
mean,
Woody.
Right?
Yes.
Just spitting on people, just beating up children. Like, what are you doing? Like, Woody, stop!
This is the way. The slinky must watch. These toys, Buzz and Woody, the toys were loosely based on Cassiter's toys growing up, with Woody's drawstring that came from a Casper doll who had a drawstring in the back.
My name is Casper. I'm a friendly ghost.
Buzz was inspired by a G.I. Joe action figure that he played with when he outgrew his Casper doll.
Oh.
Now, this part isn't relevant to the story that I've been telling, but I thought this was interesting. For Woody and Buzz, they initially wanted Paul Newman and Jim Carrey to voice the characters, but Lasseter wanted Tom Hanks and did a short with Woody with audio from Turner and Hooch to prove his point that he was perfect for the role.
Oh, interesting.
So when you see that early animation of Woody, like, that's where it's from.
Don't eat the car! Not the car!
A story that I heard, I think from the book about Pixar, The Pixar Touch. Woody kept being a jerk. Like, he is supposed to be the protagonist of the story, but he is awful, especially to Buzz Lightyear. And like, as I kept trying to rework the script to make him less of a jerk, it was so necessary for the story for him to be a terrible person. So to try to figure out how to still make him the likable protagonist, we're like, you know what? Let's just cast the most likable person in Hollywood. And that way, no matter what he does, people will still relate to this character. It makes a lot of sense. If you want somebody to like your character, cast Tom Hanks.
Yeah. But I mean, early on, like even in the, and we're going to go into Katzenberg here because he was the one who was really pushing for this edgy story and for Woody to come off as a jerk.
Slagate! Get up here and do your job! Are you deaf? I said take care of them!
I'm sorry, Woody, but I have to agree with them. I don't think what you did was right.
What? Am I hearing correctly? You don't think I was right? Who said your job was to think, Spring Wiener?
Well, I just thought that
use this vast reserve of brain power to consider this for a moment. If it wasn't for me, Andy wouldn't pay any attention to you at all. In fact, my sketchy friend, you would have been hauled away to Goodwill a long time ago, so shut your mouth and get them off the bed.
Even from Tom Hanks, like, some of the stuff that he is doing is pretty harsh and makes him almost irredeemable.
Yeah, he even commented as well that Woody felt very negative in the early drafts too.
Because of Katzenberg's input and insistence that it needs to be edgier, Woody needs to come off as more of a jerk, this actually jeopardized the production and nearly shut the entire movie down. Luckily, Lasseter did come in and fix the story. He presented the storyboard to Disney, and they were happy with the new developments. While Toy Story was in production for 4 years, even with the money coming from Disney, Pixar was still losing money, and Steve Jobs considered selling the company to other companies like Hallmark Cards, Microsoft co-founder Paul Allen, the Oracle CEO and co-founder Larry Ellison. Luckily, when Toy Story premiered on November 29th, 1995, it was a huge hit, making about $373 million worldwide, the highest grossing movie of that year. After hearing the news of its success, Jobs then took active leadership in the company and made himself CEO of Pixar, which...
He made himself the CEO.
I mean, yeah, he was the owner of Pixar. And it just seems like a jerk move to be like, he owns this company, he doesn't really believe in them, and then he's like, you're making money? Okay, if you're making money now, I'm the CEO.
Someone make me a CEO.
I was the
please.
big brain behind this operation. It was me who made this decision.
It's like that meme of like, oh, I made this, and then gives it to the other person, and the person goes, yep. I made this.
That's exactly what Jobs did. Most of that money, though, did go to Disney, and Disney owned the merchandising rights. And for Pixar, that was a bad deal. And if they made a movie that was a flop, they would most certainly go under. So in 1997, Disney and Pixar renegotiated a deal for a 50-50 partnership before they produce A Bug's Life. And this is around the time that Katzenberg resigned to start DreamWorks. Now, David, what's the deal behind Katzenberg here going to DreamWorks? And what did he do?
He just wanted to hate everything that Disney was doing. I mean, Shrek was just a big fuck you to Disney all the way through, to the point of even modeling the villain off of Michael Eisner.
I mean, who doesn't want to do that, though?
Yep.
And then when they saw Bug's Life going into production, they rushed Ants into production so they could get their ant-based movie out a month before A Bug's Life.
This is a very bold move to try to beat a very charming movie like Bug's Life and come up with these really terrifying looking ants played by Woody Allen. Like, wow, great move there. Like, it's just...
In the words of fantastic YouTuber Lindsay Ellis, petty asshole Jeffrey Katzenberg.
Like, I understand wanting to do that. I understand that need to do it, but it was just a very interesting choice. Like, I understand the need to be edgier. Like, Shrek, I have to say, they absolutely succeeded with that.
Yeah.
Because that created a cult of its own, but Ants was just like, it's an interesting move. Weird flex, bro.
Yeah.
Like, it's just like...
I mean, Katzenberg really doesn't hold much in this story overall, but it's just, we have to say something about him other than like he nearly destroyed Toy Story from the beginning. Hollywood's all about failing upwards. So,
Yep.
The theme of today's episode.
So Pixar and Disney, they continued with this 50-50 deal for the movies Toy Story 2, Monsters, Inc., Finding Nemo, and The Incredibles. But tensions between Pixar and Disney were getting worse. Pixar was looking for a better deal for their movies, while CEO at the time, Michael Eisner, would not budge, which made Steve Jobs start to look for new distributors. Eisner, instead of working out a deal, instead he tried to develop a digital animation studio within Disney called Circle 7 Animation that would solely be in charge of making Pixar sequels, and that included Toy Story. Now, this is around the time, because we had that big 90s animation boom from Disney, but then there was a time period where every sequel for those movies were straight to VHS, straight to DVD. With this animation studio, is that they would take the characters from these movies and just kind of make half-ass sequels out of them, make them straight to DVD or whatever at that time. That was a huge fuck you to Pixar, to be like, we created this world, this universe, and you're just going to shit on it. But eventually, and thankfully, Eisner stepped down, allowing Bob Iger to fill the position. Iger was looking for a way to bring back the animation boom that they saw in the 90s, and while he was at the premiere of the Hong Kong Disneyland, he noticed that a lot of the characters walking around in the park were either characters from older animated features and all the recent characters from Pixar. He knew what he needed to do, and on January 24th, 2006, Disney bought Pixar for $7.4 billion. Along with that, Ed Catmull, the president of Pixar, would now be the president of Disney Animation Studios. Steve Jobs stepped down from the CEO of Pixar and was put on the board of directors for Disney. For John Lasseter, he became the chief creative officer for Pixar and Disney, and was also the principal creative officer at Walt Disney Imagineering. After the merger, the first movie that they had created was Cars. Now, going into the history of Pixar, there is the documentary that you had mentioned before. It is not available on Disney+. It will be available, I think, around the fall in 2021 when you'll be able to watch it.
I believe it's on Netflix right now. That's how we watched it.
Yeah, it's on Netflix.
Okay.
I assume that's the reason why it's not on Disney Plus, is because it's going to be on Netflix until November.
Okay. Going into the history of Pixar is just, there's so much that goes in there.
Yeah.
But I kind of want to just reel it back to Tin Toy Christmas. Yes. So as for Tin Toy, it has not been entirely forgotten. In Toy Story 3, we got to see Lotso huggin' Bear.
Yes!
Based on Lotso.
My child.
In the original Tin Toy Story. And in Toy Story 4, we get a proper cameo of Tinny when Woody and Bo Peep go to the club hidden under the Tiki Party pinball machine, and he greets them at the entrance.
Hi, Tinny.
I still have not seen Toy Story 4. So.
Yeah, I'm not ready. Toy Story 3 did a number on me.
You mean because of how mediocre it was?
You know what, David? I just have a very emotional connection to Lotso Huggin' Bear because I own one, and it's because like my brother was like, you should buy this. I was like, no, he's evil. And then my brother goes, no, he's not, because you're gonna love him. Unfortunately, that stuck with me, so I've had this Lotso Huggin' Bear for years, so I can't watch Toy Story 3 again because of...
You don't want to see evil Lotso?
My Lotso Bear is not allowed to watch it because I don't want him to see what he could have been. So, I'm trying to keep him good.
Keep him pure.
Keep him pure. So because Toy Story 3 also did a number on me because of the incinerator scene, like I can't get myself to watch Toy Story 4, but I would like to someday.
Yeah.
I didn't realize that how many story ideas for future Toy Story movies came from this Tin Toy Christmas. And I think of everything that we've talked about on this show, well, maybe Batman is like the only other kind of thing where we may not have seen this specific project, but basically all of the the ideas from it did come back in one form or another.
So it's really interesting to see, and I'm curious about like any other projects, because like I know Monsters Inc. was vastly different before the actual story that we see now.
Oh, yeah. You can go and look at like early concept art and storyboards and story ideas, and it's like that story changed so much in its production.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm wondering if it was best that it was separated into multiple movies, all the ideas from Tin Toy, because I can only imagine what would have happened if all of those ideas were in one movie. Would it be as special, or would it have been like the worst movie ever?
This 1.5 hour Christmas special became, the ideas for 3 different movies.
Exactly. I mean, is that where we say too much of a good thing? Like, would that have happened with this movie? Makes you wonder.
I think what's really interesting as well about Tin Toy, even back to the original short, it still got the same heart and the same kind of like driving question that is fundamental to all the Toy Story movies, of this idea of these toys want to be loved and want to be played with. And even like the ending of Tin Toy is kind of supposed to be an ironic, sad ending of like, oh, just kidding. You didn't want the baby to play with you, but now you do. But now he's going to go play with this box instead.
By the way, somebody really needs to check on that baby. Where was that baby's parents? Because first of all, that baby could have choked on many different things and also put a bag over their head. Like, that is not, this is not ideal baby toys.
Not okay.
Yeah, not okay.
Yeah, all of the toys that he has are solid with sharp edges.
Edges. I'm just imagining, like, what would have happened in this 30-minute, like, would they have to deal with the death of this demonic baby, too? Like, that would have been, see, that's being edgy.
Merry Christmas, everybody.
There you go.
Yep.
There you go, Jeffrey Katzenberg. If he had his way, it would have been, like, the death of the demonic baby, death by a paper bag, It's just like...
I was pretty certain, like, once the box went on the baby's head, I was like, oh, it's a goner.
Yeah. And this is how we defeat the baby. Like, it's just like... Which really, I feel like the baby was the villain. That was the Lotso Hug and Bear of that movie.
Oh, for sure.
There you go.
So, would you guys want to see the Tin Toy Christmas?
No, because I think everything they did with Toy Story is way better than what they could have done with Tin Toy. Going back to like what they do with animated shorts with no dialogue, I think it would have been very, very strange for them to cast a voice to this silent character. And not to say that, like, Tin Toy is a classic character in the same way that, like, giving a voice to Roadrunner would be super weird. Obviously, most people haven't even seen Tin Toy. It's the type of character that can be much more expressive without saying anything and without dialogue. And I feel like it kind of would have made that original Tin Toy short a little less special.
Oh, I agree. I get nervous when you try to make a Christmas movie out of anything. So it's just like, there are very rare instances like Nightmare Before Christmas, The Muppets Christmas Carol, where Michael Caine has no business being a good actor in that movie. Like, what the heck, Michael Caine? Yeah, I just get really nervous in general when we try to add Christmas to something that was very precious on its own right. And to add Christmas to that, like, it's just... how do we make this where it's not cheesy? And so I don't think I would have been as excited for it. I mean, I'm not even excited to see a full-length Tin Toy movie in general, because I feel like, what's special about it is that it was the beginning of something. I love that we do callbacks to it. I understand that people would probably want that because, Rogue One was so great. But just to have the prequel to Toy Story being the Tin Toy, I think it would be overkill, in my opinion.
I am shocked, though, that it took them so long to actually put Tinny in a Toy Story movie. Even in the first Toy Story as an Easter egg. I mean, Pixar loves putting Easter eggs into their movies. They always have a character from their next film in each movie that they make.
If you're going to take a risk with Toy Story 4, you have to add something special, even more special things to it. To pitch something like Toy Story 4 where everybody already felt like there was an ending with Toy Story 3, I feel like they would be like, we got to add something special. Oh, wait a second. We forgot about Tinny. There you go.
Yeah.
Tinny he does make a small cameo in Toy Story 2, but it's just the toys watching TV, and on the TV is the short. It's not actually Tinny himself.
Oh, that's right. When he's flipping through the channels at the beginning.
That was the earliest we got, but it's not like the actual character himself.
What I would be interested in, not necessarily the Tin Toy Christmas, maybe a remaster of it or something.
Where the baby doesn't look as terrifying.
Where the baby looks like an actual cute Pixar baby and not a demon spawn. You know, like that would be amazing. I would not mind seeing that. Now, I know that's controversial to say, like to remake a character, but I would love to enjoy a short and be able to sleep at night. You know, that's just how I feel.
I think to justify Tinny, and if you really want to pay respects to like him being not really the first, but like the one who really like launched Pixar, I think to honor him best, I think you should do a short with Tinny, not a full-length movie, but just a short. And now that we have Disney Plus, it's the perfect platform for it. What I would like for Tinny to do is to travel through every single movie that Pixar has done. He's just off in the background for like the most iconic moments of Pixar throughout the years, and he's just kind of like hanging out in the background where no one notices him. It's kind of like
you want a Forrest Gump Tinny.
Yeah, like Lion King 1.5, where it's from the perspective of Timon and Pumbaa while the actual story is going on. So I think just having Tinny kind of having this journey back to where he belongs, back with the demon baby. And there they can redo Demon Baby.
I would absolutely watch that. I see Tinny more as like a host of some kind. Like he's like the host of a series. Like, hey, check out this. And without saying anything, he doesn't have a voice. So, but I would definitely watch that. I would watch Tinny as Forrest Gump, reliving events, inserting himself in those things.
So I think that's the best way you can honor it. Don't make it a Christmas thing. Make it a Pixar thing, following the adventures of Tinny through the years of Pixar.
Yeah.
And in one episode, Tinny improves Brave. Like, it makes it better.
Tinny is the kind of like the catalyst for a bunch of these movies. Like he's the one who, in the first Toy Story movie, maybe he's the one who accidentally pushes Buzz off the ledge through neglectful actions or whatever. I think that'd be funny.
Oh my goodness. Then how would we add Tinny to Up? I don't know if I could handle that episode. Does he like help Carl grieve in between, or does he just help create a moment between Carl and Russell? Maybe that's the Christmas episode.
I think it'd be funny if it's just a scene between him and Doug. He screams out squirrel, and then he makes a whatever musical sounds he does, and they just go back and forth between like squirrel, and then he's like accordion, squirrel, accordion, squirrel, accordion.
And that's the whole episode.
I think that's it, unless you guys have any other things you want to say about Katzenberg.
No.
I'm just surprised that we didn't mention that the three of us, you know, we've cosplayed.
Yes, we have.
We Disney bounded.
Up characters.
We all Disney bounded as Up characters.
Right.
Like, I was trying to bait Dan. I was trying to be like, you know, significant moments in my life.
Yes.
And I was like, Dan, hello, we all Disney bounded.
Yes, we did.
It's not cosplaying in Disneyland because you're not allowed to cosplay in Disneyland. It's Disney bounding because we're not allowed to wear full-on costumes. But we went for it. We actually dressed up as Pixar characters. I was Ellie and David was Carl, obviously. We were the younger versions of them. And of course, Dan was Russell. And knowing who Dan is, he's like the straight guy to our craziness. And I was like, Dan is just going to come up with a t-shirt, call it a day, and say, I'm Russell. And then I saw Dan's outfit and I was like, we are doing this. We are Up. And of course, we walked around Disneyland and everyone just was like, yeah, we love your Disney bounce. I was like, bet your ass you do. So that was a great time.
I take my bounding seriously. I've done Han Solo, Lin-Manuel Miranda's character in the newest Mary Poppins.
Oh, I don't think I've seen that.
Oh my goodness, yes. And I've seen pictures after that. Like, I've seen Dan's Disney bounding, and I'm kicking myself because I was like, I should have known. Like, Dan was Aquaman at some point.
I was.
And yeah, like, you got the wig and everything. I was like, I should have known that this was going to be...
I was so committed to that costume. I actually found temporary tattoos, like ones that you can paint on your skin. It's not one of those like temporary tattoos that you get out of a gumball machine. This is like ink that stays on you for like 2 weeks.
Yep.
Over the process of a week, I actually had my roommate paint the whole Aquaman sleeve on me up until Halloween.
Oh my goodness.
I commit.
That's pretty great. So I'm hoping, like, when this whole pandemic is over, when we do another round of Disney bounding, what would we do? Would we be Tinny?
We're all Tinny.
We're all Tinny.
And I'm going to be the terrifying baby. Adam Savage wears it all the time, but it's that screaming baby mask that you can put on.
Oh, God. Yeah. I would run away from you at Disneyland. But we're doing it. That's it.
Yeah.
Like, I could be pre-Tinny, like, nice and shiny. David can be...
No, I'll be all the toys under the couch and just glue giant googly eyes onto myself.
Oh, my goodness. It would be the most obscure Disney bounding ever, and only the real fans would know what was happening.
Yeah.
Yeah. We're doing it.
Perfect.
Well, I guess it's going to be bringing our episode to a close then.
Yes.
On that note, thank you, Alexa, for being on the show with us.
Thank you for having me. I'm surprised that you wanted me on the show.
Yeah.
Well, I hope you had a good time.
Yeah.
I did. Yeah. I really did. Because, again, I love hearing Disney facts that I've never heard before.
Yeah.
And I also love knowing that I knew a lot of the things that Dan was talking about. I was like, oh my God. Because, you know, Dan is just a ball of information. Mm-hmm. I just have thoughts in my head. I go, yeah, I like that, you know. But Dan is actually like, no, this is information. This is really what happens. And, you know, I am so glad that I knew a lot of them. I was like, yes, I am smart, you know.
I feel validated.
I feel validated. I feel seen, you know. So it was really cool to know all of that stuff. So thank you for having me.
Of course. Mm-hmm. Now, if people like your voice, people like your face, where can they see you on the internets?
Oh my goodness! So if you like my voice, if you like the vibe that I'm giving off, me and David are actually part of just a small little podcast called Come On Fahuga Pods, where we talk about Homestar Runner.
Go check it out on pipedreampodcasts.com.
Yeah, I guess we're on the same production company, I guess. I do a segment called Hey Alexa, What Do You Think of This? In that podcast, because I have not seen Homestar Runner. I mean, I haven't seen a lot of episodes. So they basically make me watch it for the first time, and I give you my thoughts and my feelings, and I give you all of me in that. That's something we've done. We've also done a podcast called Goodnight Hollywood. We have like 11 great episodes.
Oh,
and we
yeah.
stopped. It stopped just like our Pixar marathon.
Bring back Good Night Hollywood. Bring it back.
Dan, I think you're probably one of two of our biggest fans of that podcast because, again, it was something where we put a lot of our emotions into that.
It was a lot of emotional labor. It took a lot to do it.
If you like my face, you can check out my streams on twitch.tv/Miss Phasma, as in Captain Phasma, but instead of Captain, it's Miss because copyright. Am I right?
Oh, I figured that you just haven't worked up the ranks yet. You got to get to Colonel Phasma, and you have to get to General Phasma,
specific Phasma. You know,
and what are the types of things that you stream there?
On Wednesdays, I have something called Wacky Spooky Wednesdays, where I play the weirdest games in the world. The weirder, the better.
Weird indie mystery games and puzzle games and stuff like that.
I dig the mystery puzzle games, so I'm a variety streamer. I try to change it up every week.
Would you play the Toy Story game, the Genesis Toy Story game, if you could find it?
You bet your bottom dollar I will. You bring that to me and I will play it just for you. I also play scary games because for some reason people enjoy the fact that I get really terrified of gigantic babies. So the bigger the baby, the better the scare. If you know any games about gigantic babies chasing me, that's it. On Fridays, we usually do something called Request Fridays, where the audience tells me what they want me to do. It has currently changed to just chatties, where I can talk to the community that comes over. I usually put makeup on, depending on what people want to see. It can get really good, surprisingly, and it can also get really bad. Like sometimes I look like a clown at the end of it, but people enjoy that stuff. So, or I look like a terrifying Bratz doll. So it's great. Twitch.tv/Miss Phasma.
Excellent.
General in training.
Yeah. And you can find more of this podcast by going to our website, pipedreampodcast.com, to find all previous episodes and the aforementioned Come On Fahuga Pods and Goodnight Hollywood, as well as other shows like The Weird Alphabet and Escape from Vault Disney. You can find us on social media. We're on Twitter and Instagram at HDNTGM. Yes.
That's just Twitter.
I always mix this up. That's Twitter. Instagram is How Did This Not Get Made? Our Gmail is notgetmade
Correct.
at gmail.com.
Again, we made this as confusing as possible.
I don't know if we ever talked about, but please write us reviews on iTunes. We would love to get your feedback on there. It's really helpful for spreading awareness of the show. But if you'd also like to support us financially, you can give to our Patreon page. If you go to our website, pipedreampodcast.com, you can find the link where that Patreon page helps pay for the feeds of all of our shows, help us with other costs of doing the shows for this show, Come On Fugal Pods, and all of our previous feeds as well.
I do have to mention, because this is our holiday special, this is not our only holiday special that we are a part of. We are also going to be on an episode of Escape from Vault Disney. Yes, you cannot escape Disney when you listen to us. We are going to be covering Mickey's Once Upon a Christmas and how wonderful and not outdated it is.
Oh, so it was a successful Christmas movie.
It was a
that
great
was
Christmas movie, honestly.
Okay. All right.
I did find a emulator for the Toy Story game. It looks like
just saw that.
You have limited time on this one because it uses Flash to play.
God. Well, Dan, I mean, if you want to guest on my stream on Wednesday, you let me know.
I should be able to. I don't see why I wouldn't.
You'll have to help me figure out the technology of how to play this while you can watch it in real time. We can figure that shit out.
All right.
Thank you, everybody, so much for listening. And stay tuned at twitch.tv/MissPhasma to see if that ends up happening.
Oh, there's a snake in my boot. Did you see that your boy Chris Evans is going to be Buzz?
Oh my God. I've never been attracted to Buzz Lightyear ever. So this will be very new territory.
Tim Allen doesn't do it for you?
Oh God, definitely not. Definitely the fuck not. But Chris Evans, he can infinity my beyond any day. Oh God.